This incident that was just covered by the Washington Post in recent days suggests that a war crime may have been committed.
I think it's very important for everybody to reserve judgment and not leap to conclusions until you have all the facts, and that's what we'll be uncovering.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Tuesday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From the ongoing fallout of controversial boat strikes in the Caribbean to our special look at acts of charity on this Giving Tuesday. So let's jump right in. I want to turn to growing controversy over the deadly boat strikes off the coast of Venezuela. So yesterday, the White House basically told its side of the story, but it doesn't look like that really cleared anything up. Where do we stand this morning?
Yeah, this is, as we've been saying, we're at the beginning of this story, nowhere near the end. Members of Congress on both the Democratic side and the Republican side are demanding more accountability. They're demanding more answers. Just to get you caught up, this all really started with a Washington Post story that alleged Secretary Pete Hegseth essentially of giving a kill order on September 2nd, that there was an initial strike of these drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean, which we've been covering. There's been dozens of strikes over the last several months, all in the name of preventing drugs from flowing into the United States. On September 2nd, which is the strike in question, there was the Washington Post report of an initial strike, survivors, and then a follow-up strike. Well, that's when the accusations of war crimes from both sides of the aisle began to flow here in Washington. There is an international law does states that incapacitated individuals should not face strikes unless there's ongoing combat operations. There's manuals of the Pentagon that say that shipwrecked individuals should get medical attention, not further strikes. Again, lots of questions here, but what the White House has done in the last 24 hours is they've essentially confirmed that there were strikes, but they have taken the onus off of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and put it on Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley, who White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said this about the Admiral's actions on that day. Take a listen.
With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
So to be clear, the Secretary of Defense, the White House, they're standing by the Admiral. They believe that he operated within the confines of the law. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has posted on social media a statement clarifying his support for the Admiral, saying, quote, "Let's make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% support. I stand by him in the combat decisions he has made on the September 2nd mission and all others since." So the Secretary of Defense clearly saying that the decisions were made by the Admiral. The Washington Post continues to stand by their story. Again, not going anywhere because Congress is vowing to get involved. Here's Senator Roger Wicker, the Republican senator from Mississippi.
We're going to conduct oversight, and we're going to try to get to the facts. And to the extent that we're able to see videos and see what the orders were, we'll have a lot more information other than just news reports. So that's what we're going to do, and it's our function. I've spoken to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've spoken to the Secretary of Defense, and we'll be speaking to the Admiral that was in charge of the operation.
Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi there, a Republican senator, notably vowing more accountability on this front. Again, this is a nuanced story, Holly, because on one hand, you have a sizable military presence in the Caribbean, the largest in generations, estimates from somewhere around 15,000 sailors and Marines. The USS Gerald Ford is there, the most advanced U.S. Naval Carrier Strike Group. The question is all this military presence all about taking on drug boats, or is this about involving Venezuela as well. The President of the United States has demanded to close airspace around Venezuela. Venezuela says the American president can't do that. We've seen a number of commercial flights canceled in recent weeks into Venezuela as well. What's the real purpose of the sheer size of the military buildup, the American military buildup in Venezuela? One of the other storylines that's tangentially attached to this story as well. So again, we're at the beginning of this, not the end. More investigation, more of an investigation role from Congress, though, is clearly forthcoming.
All right, and Joe, before we let you go, I wanted to get your take on the special election going on in Tennessee today. It's for the vacated seat of former Representative Mark Green in the 7th Congressional District. What are you expecting?
Well, let's just talk about, first and foremost, that it's hard to believe that we're even talking about this district. This is a district that President Trump won by more than 20 points last November. But if you talk to Democratic operatives and strategists, they feel like they have a fighting chance today, given it's a special election. Giving turnout is always a big question mark. As the old saying goes, special elections are special for a reason. You don't know who's turning out here. And you also don't know how the popularity of President Trump is playing a role into all of this. The candidates are Republican Matt Van Epps, Democrat Afton Bain. Bain is going after a subsect of independent voters. Parts of this district used to be represented by a blue dog Democrat, a moderate Democrat in the state of Tennessee. How much is affordability? How much are all these stories out of Washington playing a role? President Trump's approval rating has taken a significant dip in recent weeks. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson was on the ground campaigning in Tennessee yesterday. President Trump called in to Speaker Johnson to give Republicans there a pep talk. President Trump has even talked about this special election on social media in recent hours. I'm going to read you what the president said. He said, quote, and there it is, I am asking the America First Patriots in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District to please get out and vote tomorrow for a phenomenal candidate, Matt Van Epps, on Election Day, Tuesday, December 2nd. You can win this election. And he went on to say that the world is paying attention. I mean, this is not something that you do in an election that you think someone's going to win by 20 points. You know, we have colleagues in Nashville. We have a Scripps News Group station in Nashville, News Channel 5, and I was listening to their morning show this morning, Holly. Commercial after commercial after commercial. There's been millions of dollars spent on this race. Democrats have pumped in money here, thinking they've got a shot. If there is an upset heard around the world, that would be a potential 5-alarm fire for Republicans going into next year's midterm elections. Remember, we're going to get a test case today. If Republicans win by 10, 15, 20 points today, they're going to feel okay. But if Democrats even make this a close race tonight with these results, they're going to feel really good going into next year's midterm elections. And if there is somehow some sort of upset heard around the world, then all of a sudden you're talking about number problems for Speaker Mike Johnson and his speakership and holding on to majority, being able to pass things in the U.S. House, given that we have retirements. Marjorie Taylor Greene will be retiring in short order. It would be a loss of a seat, a flip of a seat. So there's a lot. Don't sleep on this special election in Tennessee. Look for the results tonight, and tomorrow morning, I have a feeling we'll be dissecting them together here on Morning Rush, Holly.
I love your enthusiasm. I feel like I'm talking a little bit to you about the Florida-Georgia game or something like that. But it is important, and I think I'll be watching. Look forward to chatting with you about this tomorrow as we see the results. Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us. Thank you, Joe. And now let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. Former Honduras President Juan Orlando Hernandez is a free man today after President Trump pardoned him. Hernandez was serving a 45-year sentence for helping drug traffickers move hundreds of tons of cocaine to the United States. He was released from a West Virginia prison Monday. Trump says he believes Hernandez was set up by the Biden administration and that the people of Honduras asked for the pardon. Hernandez had maintained his innocence throughout his trial. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem calling for a full travel ban on certain countries after meeting with President Trump on Monday. She said the U.S. was not founded for, quote, foreign invaders to slaughter our heroes. Noam's remarks came days after an Afghan national shot 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C., killing one. The suspect entered the U.S. in 2021 during the Biden administration's Afghan resettlement effort. And we're watching some developing weather news. A bomb cyclone is rapidly forming over the eastern U.S. today. That's the third record-breaking storm this week. The rapidly strengthening system is bringing northern snow, southern rain, and possible Gulf Coast tornadoes. The FAA warns some airports could see ground stops today after Chicago O'Hare was shut down last night. Further west, people are still digging out from previous rounds of snow and ice. Forecasters predict new low temperature records in some areas today. Coming up on Today as It Happened.
What are your thoughts about President Trump calling Governor Walz retarded?
Well, look, that's not the word that I would choose.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. Right now, House leadership is holding their weekly news conference. Let's listen in.
Okay, you're so eager, I gotta get it.
We have a relationship at this point. First off, happy Thanksgiving as well. But quick question, what are your thoughts about, and not related to the Minnesota welfare scandal, but specifically what are your thoughts about President Trump calling Governor Walz retarded?
Well, look, that's not the word that I would choose. I think his reaction was probably a spontaneous one to the enormous amount of fraud that was announced there. We're thinking it may be, could be $2 billion. Congressman Emmer, of course, represents that state, and it is an outrage. And we're told that this was funding terrorist organizations in Somalia, and so it's a lot to look into. I mean, all of us, when we heard the news, we reacted in different ways, and you know, that's not the word I would choose. But I think everybody understands how absurd and crazy that is, and how Congress has an immediate obligation to look into it, and the administration is as well, and we're going to get down to the bottom of that. Governor Walz appears to have a lot to answer for, so it was a really stupid thing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. You talked a lot about your accomplishments, and one you didn't mention is the SAVE Act, which the House has passed twice. It's still awaiting action in the Senate for some reason. But many are still asking when an in-person, same-day, hand-counted paper ballot measure will be passed, and will that be done in time for the 2026 election?
Yeah, I've been asking that myself. I think that would be a really important measure to eliminate you know, fraud in elections. And there is some element of fraud in every election. We all know that. And we have a duty as lawmakers to prevent as much of that as is humanly possible. The SAVE Act has been a big priority of ours. I think I did mention it in the list, but it was so long. I certainly intended to. It's an important measure, and we would certainly love to get that signed into law. We need a little help in the Senate, of course, to do that. We don't have control over all elections. The states in our system, as you know, have a lot of responsibility over that, and that is federalism. We support that. The states have that in their jurisdiction of authority. We don't want to federalize all elections because that could open up a whole other can of worms. But with regard to federal elections, at least, you know, elections for Congress and Senate, we do have some say. And so the SAVE Act would be an effort to ensure that we eliminate as much fraud as possible. I've obviously been a big champion. I was a co-author of it before I became Speaker. We've been working on this, and we'll continue to try to get it done. So it's a big priority. Yes,
Mr.
Speaker.
Yes,
Speaker.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Elise Stefanik wrote on social media this morning that you are protecting the deep state by not including a provision in the Intelligence Authorization Act. What's your reaction to this claim, and why is House Republican leadership not united on this?
Well, all of that is false. I don't exactly know why Elise won't just call me. I texted her yesterday. She's upset that one of her provisions is not being made, I think, into the NDAA. I explained to her on a text message as soon as I heard this yesterday. I was campaigning in Tennessee, and I wrote her and I said, what are you talking about? This hasn't even made it to my level. The way regular order works is, and I think she should know this, we'll be talking about it, I'm sure, today. The way this works is that it has to go through committees of jurisdiction if it will be attached to the NDAA. And this provision that she's working on, I think, is under the jurisdiction of judiciary. And so there's a four corners engagement and agreement that's required. You all know how this works. The two chairs and the two ranking members of the committees of jurisdiction, which would be Judiciary in the House and Senate, all have to agree, or at least 3 out of 4 have to agree. It's typically unanimous to make sure that it makes it onto the bill. Well, in this case, I found out last night, this wasn't even on my radar, that apparently didn't happen. I haven't even talked to those chairmen. I haven't had time because I got in late last night. But apparently those 4, the 2 chairs and the 2 rankers in both chambers did not agree, and so that provision was dropped out of the NDAA. It doesn't mean it can't become law or even that is a final decision. But I sent my friend Elise a text last night and I said, can you find out what the issue was and I'll help you resolve it. I support her provision. I mean, I would vote for it. I think it's smart. And I'm not sure exactly why it wasn't included. So I don't know why she's frustrated with me. I literally had nothing to do with it. But I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and help her. I want everybody to be successful, and we're going to try to make the bill as best it can be.
On the Caribbean boat strikes, the administration has acknowledged that there was a second strike in that attack in September, but they have not said if there were any defenseless survivors. Should they release the video to Congress, the unedited video to Congress and to the American public? And 2, if the defenseless survivors were killed, would that constitute a violation of the laws of war?
I'm not going to prejudge any of that. As you know, both of the Armed Services Committee and the Senate and the House will be having hearings on this to review, and that's their role. I have been listening. Again, I was pretty busy yesterday. I didn't follow a lot of the news, but I caught up a little bit early this morning. That my assessment of this, my understanding is that most of the people that have looked at this, at least in a preliminary review, say that the admiral who ordered the second strike thought it was necessary to complete the mission. He's a highly decorated, highly respected admiral in the Navy, and he made that call. And so, we're going to have to look at that. I'm sure Congress has a right to look at it. I don't know how much of the tape should be released because I'm not sure how much is sensitive with regard to national security and all that. I haven't had a chance to review it, so I'm not going to prejudge it. But I will say that, it's not an unprecedented thing. One of the things I was reminded of this morning is that under Barack Obama, President Obama, he had, I think, over 550 drone strikes on people who were targeted as enemies of the country, and nobody ever questioned it, okay? And secondary strikes are not unusual. It has to happen if a mission is going to be completed. So I haven't reviewed the scope of the mission. I haven't reviewed that particular strike. I don't know what went into the admiral's decision matrix. But it's something Congress will look at, and we'll do that in the regular process and order. I think it's very important for everybody to reserve judgment and not leap to conclusions until you have all the facts, and that's what will be uncovered again.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
If the Trump administration does not hold the people accountable, I guarantee you a future administration will do so because there is no statute of limitations for war crimes.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Okay, let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
Now I'd like to talk about war crimes. Last week, Secretary Hegseth lied and denied media reports that the U.S. military ordered a second strike on defenseless shipwrecked survivors. Then yesterday, both the White House and Hegseth said actually it was Admiral Bradley who ordered the second strike. I served on active duty as a JAG for 4 years and then an additional 21 years in the reserves. And let me be very clear, killing shipwreck survivors is a war crime. The Pentagon's own Department of Defense law manual on the law of war literally says that, quote, orders to fire upon the shipwrecked will be clearly illegal. The Department of Justice must conduct an investigation into the war crime and hold all those accountable, including Secretary Hegseth. He allegedly said, quote, kill them all. If the Trump administration does not hold the people accountable, I guarantee you a future administration will do so because there is no statute of limitations for war crimes. And now I have a message for the members of the United States military. Thank you for your service to our great nation. And for those of us who served, we know that we all followed a code of conduct. And part of that code of conduct is to not lie and to accept responsibility. Unfortunately, the head of the Department of Defense, Secretary Hegseth, engaged in dishonorable conduct. He stated on national TV, quote, "I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat."
Is impeachment for the defense secretary, is that something that should be on the table, and would you guys potentially support that right now, especially if the facts regarding this alleged follow-on strike on the shipwreck are borne out?
Yeah, let's not draw the conclusion before we hear the evidence. I appreciate that both Senate majority and minority members, as well as House Armed Services members, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, indicated that they want a full accountability to what's happening in Venezuela, especially with the strike, as the Vice Chair mentioned. That's where this should start. Look, Republicans are not going to impeach Pete Hegseth. We feel he should resign. The Vice Chair has said that multiple times from this podium. I've said he's the most unqualified Secretary of Defense that we've ever had in this country. So that's how we personally feel. But when it comes to the evidence and the accountability and the oversight, let's go through that process. But members of the military, need to tell the truth, as the Vice Chair said, and we need a full accounting of what happened on that day with that strike in particular, and whether there were crimes that were committed.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
A man in ICE detention was found dead in a shower over the summer. I'm Patrick Terpstra reporting in New York. Ahead, why his family says the government's not telling the whole story.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. Let's get to it. There are new questions about a man found dead at an immigration detention center in Pennsylvania. The man's family says they're not getting the full story of what unfolded at the lockup run by a private prison company. It's a place where our investigative team had previously uncovered complaints about lack of medical care. Now the man's brother is speaking out in his first sit-down television interview. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra is live in our D.C. newsroom. And Patrick, you first learned about this death over the summer. What more have you learned since then?
Well, that's right, Holly. This was a Chinese national who was found dead in August, and we were only recently able to obtain the autopsy report, which is raising a lot of questions about exactly what happened inside this ICE detention center. We want to let our viewers know that this story includes a description of suicide. 32-year-old Xiaofeng Ge came to the U.S. from China, crossing from Mexico as an undocumented immigrant. He settled in New York City with his older brother, driving ride shares and delivering packages. He's a very down-to-earth person, very industrious person, working very hard, his brother Yanfeng tells us in an interview with an interpreter. Things took a turn in January when police arrested Xiaofeng. His brother says Xiaofeng had been duped into participating in a gift card scheme. Xiaofeng pleaded guilty to fraud. After he finished a short sentence in jail, ICE took him into custody. They transferred him to the Moshannon Valley Processing Center in Pennsylvania, the largest ICE detention center on the East Coast, run by the for-profit Geo Group. 4 days after his arrival, a guard would find Xiaofeng before dawn, hanging in a shower stall by a torn bedsheet.
555 Geo Drive, the Moshannon Valley Processing Center. ALS emergency for cardiac arrest.
He is pronounced dead.
What?
I couldn't even believe it myself, Yanfeng says. It was only after watching the news I pinched myself and I felt the pain. That's when I started to realize it was real. It was a nightmare. He was suffering too much in there. The detainee death report says a Moshannon detention officer found Mr. Ge with a cloth ligature, a bed sheet around his neck, and a shower stall. Xiaofeng's family says that failed to disclose a key detail. The autopsy report by a Pennsylvania coroner obtained by Scripps News lists suicide by hanging as Xiaofeng Ge's cause of death. But it also says he was found with his hands and feet tied behind his back. ICE never said anything about that.
Do you believe that maybe this wasn't a suicide?
I don't know.
The family's attorney, Jeremy Ravinsky.
How were his hands and feet tied behind his back? Was he able to do that himself? Was he assisted? We don't know.
The autopsy says a search of medical literature shows a few references to patients binding their hands and feet prior to suicide by hanging. Yanfeng Ge's attorney says the federal government is refusing to share all the information it has, including photographs taken at the scene, referenced in the autopsy report.
And Chao Feng's family haven't even gotten an apology from ICE, Geo Group, anyone for what happened?
No. But forget an apology. They haven't given us an explanation. We don't know anything.
Which is why Yanfeng Ge has filed a federal lawsuit against ICE and Homeland Security, demanding the release of improperly withheld records.
The family wants accountability. Chao Feng was in the United States government's custody. It was their obligation to keep him safe, and they failed to do that. Regardless of whether or not he was here legally, his life mattered.
Morning. A Scripps News investigation this summer found complaints about mental health services at Moshannon before Chao Feng Ge died. Documented instances of detainees placed on suicide watch. Some of them desperate to see a judge, wrote petitions we found filed in a small federal courthouse in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. One petition said Moshannon discontinued the 15-minute wellness checks for a detainee who experienced severe panic attacks, including one that led to his hospitalization after a suicide attempt. Another report of an immigrant with persistent anxiety who had planned to ingest soap or bleach to commit suicide. A detainee from Nigeria called us from inside the lockup, detailing her own thoughts of self-harm.
To commit suicide, to kill myself because of all what is going on with the pain and all. When I think about my two kids, I keep myself and be strong. I've never been locked up like this in my life.
ICE says she has had numerous visits with medical staff and has refused recommended treatments. We also heard complaints about a lack of translation services, a struggle for Chao Feng as well. Mr. Ge was isolated because no one in the facility could speak Mandarin, the lawsuit says. Staff refused to even try to communicate with him, much less offer him the mental health care that he so urgently needed. The Geo Group has told us in the past it provides around-the-clock access to medical care and translation services. The ICE detainee death report for Chao Feng Ge says he spoke to a Mandarin language interpreter when he arrived at Moshannon and denied having any past medical or mental health conditions. But his brother says Chao Feng had talked about hurting himself for months. When he was arrested, he did say he felt suicidal, Yanfeng says, but saying words are very, very different from doing it. Geo Group referred us to DHS, the agency telling us they received Yanfeng's request for information about his brother's death just before the government shutdown, and that requests like that will be responded to through the proper channels. They also say suicides in DHS custody are tragic and rare. Ge became one of at least 15 detainees to die in ICE custody this year, according to the agency's own numbers. That includes 2 other apparent suicides. I want to get to the truth, what exactly he experienced, how he suffered, so I can more deeply feel for myself his suffering.
The family is hoping that this lawsuit will essentially have a judge force DHS to release all these records pertaining to Chao Feng's death. And Holly, what this really shows is that someone can die in ICE custody at one of these detention centers, and their family can be left in the dark about exactly what happened.
Wow, Patrick, what a story. I'm just so startled by the fact that the man's feet and hands were tied behind his back. I mean, are they saying that really this could be a suicide?
And that really was surprising to us as well. How is it possible that hands and feet could be tied behind the back of someone that took their own life? It was something the coroner in Pennsylvania found very unusual, and in fact did some research and found that this does happen in cases, but it is very unusual. We did our own research and reached out to medical examiners, and they told us the same thing, that they have seen that in the past, that people will actually do that when they are trying to take take their own lives. But again, it raises a lot of questions about how long would that take, and especially when you're in a detention center that is under 24/7 surveillance, as these companies and ICE says. Is that something that would require a lot of time and effort to do and not be noticed? These are all questions that the family wants answers, and that they hope will be in those records that they hope to finally get to see. Holly.
Excellent work on this story. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra live for us. We appreciate it. Up next on Today As It Happened.
We've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's jump right in.
Who gave the order to kill, and were those words ever uttered? Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth blaming Vice Admiral Frank Bradley. The rest he chalked up, in his words, to the fog of war. He made those comments during the president's cabinet meeting today. He's talking about that highly controversial so-called double tap on a drug boat in the Caribbean. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live right now on the North Lawn. And Haley, did we get a clear answer as to that critical question? Who ordered the strike?
Well, Del, the White House is doubling down on that double strike from early September. They have suggested that Secretary Pete Hegseth authorized the strike, but the Special Operations Commander, Admiral Bradley, made the decision for the follow-on. This all stems from a report from the Washington Post that suggested that Hegseth gave an order to kill them all and that Bradley was acting on those commands. The White House and Hegseth have denied that exact quote, but the secretary, when pressed on this, said that he watched only the first strike, did not personally see survivors, what he blamed on, as you mentioned, Del, the fog of war, and later learned Bradley made the call to sink the boat. He did not specify, however, though, whether the commander, in fact, was knowledgeable about survivors before that second strike was ordered, pivoting instead to criticism of the reporting. However, Hegseth offered backing of the commander that the White House has said this week acted within his authority, saying this.
We've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. We always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Now, Del, President Trump, who at the time of the strike, when announcing it to reporters, had noted he had gotten a, quote, a little bit of a briefing from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, denied knowing about the second strike today, suggesting he hadn't gotten a lot of information. The president over the weekend suggested he wouldn't have wanted a second strike, but maintained he wants boats taken out and backed Secretary Hegseth in this. At the same time as the president defended the policy of taking out what are these alleged boats trafficking narcotics, the president said they will also conduct land strikes in an effort to combat drug trafficking. The president stopped short of naming specific countries, Del, though did muse over Colombia in addition to Venezuela, but rather suggested that anyone making or selling drugs bound for the United States could be on the receiving end of this. Now, when it comes to the boat strikes specifically we have seen carried out over the past several months, the Pentagon today maintained that intelligence has confirmed that those hit are what they call, quote, narco terrorists, but has yet to offer specific concrete details of that. In total, the Pentagon says they have conducted 21 strikes and killed 82, Dow.
And fascinating that the defense secretary said that he believed there was as much as an hour between that first strike and the so-called double tap on that boat in the Caribbean. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull live for us on the North Lawn. Haley, thank you very much. And now let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. The man accused of shooting those 2 National Guard troops last week, pleading not guilty to first-degree murder and assault charges, Ramanullah Lakhanwal making his first court appearance from his hospital bed. The 29-year-old Afghan national was shot following what prosecutors described as an ambush-style attack. Investigators still have yet to find a motive. Specialist Sarah Beckstrom was shot and killed. Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf is still hospitalized but said to be making movements. The Transportation Department telling 3,000 trucking schools they could lose their accreditation in 30 days if they don't comply with federal requirements. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy saying the schools are accused of falsifying training data and failing to meet standards. Another 4,000 schools are facing warnings. Together they represent more than 40% of the nation's 16,000 authorized training providers. The crackdown is part of the Trump administration's broader effort to ensure drivers are qualified to hold those CDLs, commercial driver's licenses. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins saying she will withhold food stamp benefits from people who live in democratically controlled states. She says she will start doing so this week. Making that announcement during the Trump cabinet meeting today, she says this is already in motion and says it's because those states refuse to give the Agriculture Department certain information, including names and immigration status. 1 in 8 Americans rely on their SNAP benefits.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
So World Central Kitchen is all over the world right now. We're in Jamaica, we're in Brazil, we're in the Philippines, we're in Ukraine, we're in Haiti, we're in Gaza, we're in Lebanon.
We're glad you're back with Today as It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your daily rundown of the top stories of the day.
The Trump administration firing 8 immigration judges on Monday, that according to an official with the National Association of Immigration Judges. The latest firings coming as Homeland Security is actively now hiring deportation judges. According to the union, so far more than 100 immigration judges have either fired or resigned following an offer from DOJ. Others have been transferred out. Today is Giving Tuesday. The first Tuesday after Thanksgiving is the traditional day of generosity for people all around the world. It started as a hashtag back in 2012. It is now one of the biggest fundraising days of the year for nonprofits in this country. And today, we're looking at some of the places where you can donate. Linda Roth is the chief. Linda, I tried. I really did. Linda Roth is the chief communications officer with the World Central Kitchen. Hi, Linda. How you doing?
I'm great, Del. Thanks for having me today.
You got it. You guys have actually flipped the script on what it means to feed the hungry worldwide, often going into hotspots and risking lives to do so. Tell us about your vision and how it came about.
So World Central Kitchen is all over the world right now. We're in Jamaica, we're in Brazil, we're in the Philippines, we're in Ukraine, we're in Haiti, we're in Gaza, we're in Lebanon. And really how it came about was we were founded by Chef Jose Andres, who is a celebrity chef that your viewers might know from his show with Martha Stewart last season called Yes Chef, or from his Spanish travel show with his daughters on CNN. He's written a bunch of books and he has 2 Michelin stars. He went to Haiti after the earthquake in 2010, and he thought, these people are hungry. How about if we get some chefs to feed them some culturally appropriate, fresh, hot meals? You know, when people have a meal in their hand, they just feel so much less anxious, so much more able to deal with whatever disaster is getting thrown at them at the time. And it's actually a great story, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to tell you, he cooked his amazing Spanish black beans for all the people in Haiti recovering from the earthquake. And as people were leaving the dining area, they were throwing out the beans. And Chef pulled aside some Haitian women, said, why is no one eating my beans? And they said, you're not making them how we like to make them. And he said, show me. And so he started cooking black beans the way the Haitians love to have them. And that's when the idea for World Central Kitchen was born. It was, let's feed people what makes them feel at home. Let's feed people what makes them feel good when they're quite possibly facing the worst day of their lives.
I was in Haiti on the ground when he was on the ground. And I got to tell you, as I have followed the chef and the World Central Kitchen, I have thought you guys must have 10,000 people working for you. What are your numbers and how do you manage to get it done?
So we do not have that many people working for us. We're only about 130 people right now. And the secret to our success is we're really community first. So everywhere we go, leaders emerge, people in the community come out and they say, how can we help? And we're like, well, can you drive? Can you cook? Can you stir? Can you deliver? Right? So right now in Jamaica, we have very, very few people on the ground. It's really Jamaicans serving Jamaicans, Jamaicans cooking for their neighbors, delivering food to their neighbors, going out into the communities and finding people who may have been overlooked, who haven't had anything to eat yet, and they're reporting back. And that's how we do it. In Ukraine, we're 100% Ukrainians serving Ukrainians. In Gaza, it's 100% Palestinians. And that's really what we like to do, is leave a community better off. We leave skills in the community. We put money into the local community. We try to source all our ingredients from the places we are. So that's how we do it with so few people.
Linda, with success comes scrutiny. Explain why it is important for people to donate. They see a celebrity chef and they think you guys are just rolling in the dough. Somebody is writing those big checks. Why should I donate my $25, $40 to World Central Kitchen?
So I think the community is really what makes us different from a lot of other organizations. Also, we strive to be feeding within 24 hours of a disaster, and our costs are very low. We are at 10% or less overhead, and really $5 or less buys an entire meal. And today on Giving Tuesday, we're introducing a program called the Kitchen Corps. We're trying to get 20,000 new monthly donors. Most of our fundraising and our resources come from just regular, everyday people out in the world who want to do something when they see a disaster, but they don't know what to do. We take no government funding. So be rest assured that your money is going back into local communities. It's going to support people on the ground who really need it the most. And we're small, we're lean, we're mean. And everything we do, we try to put back into the community.
Linda, you walk the walk, you talk the talk. It has been a tough year for World Central Kitchen. Lives have been lost. Describe, if you will, the fact that you'll go anywhere where there's a need.
Yes. So we can't go everywhere, of course. At one point this year, we were in 12 places at one time. And really, when we look and we look at when a disaster happens and we're like, do we already have a community there? In Brazil, where we are still right now, there was a really rare freak tornado that destroyed a community. And we already had a community and a network of people there. Earlier this year, in floods in Pakistan, we had a strong community from the last time we were there. So we try to go places where we can get there quickly, make a big impact, and again, really work with that community to see what they need and how they need the help.
All right, let's get to the nitty-gritty. How can people donate?
So WCK.org is where to go. And if you want to be part of our Kitchen Corps, like I said, most of our funding is just grassroots, people just giving a few dollars every month.
Thank you so much for joining us on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. We hope you have a great Tuesday night.